And at this time, I would call to order the Wednesday, February 21st meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. May we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Chester? Mr. Cho? Ms. McLaughlin?
Here.
Mr. Roosh? Ms. Utman? Here. Warmbrun?
Here.
Mr. Welch?
Here, we have a quorum. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
This time, if the board members have had a chance to look over the minutes, would ask for their approval. And moved. Do we have a second to that?
Second.
All in favor of approval of the minutes indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by the same? Minutes of the January 17th meeting are approved. Are there any written communications?
There are none.
Any continued public hearings?
There are none.
All right, at this time, we will soon commence our public hearing for tonight. We will follow the following procedures. We will open the public hearing. The staff will present a summary of the case. The zoning board members then can ask questions of staff. The applicant then can make a statement and present evidence. The zoning board members ask questions of the applicant. Any proponents in favor of the application can make statements. Board members can question those proponents. Any opponents can make statements. Board can question those opponents. Then we would take any rebuttal by the applicant, any rebuttal by the objectors. Applicant then is given an opportunity to make a final statement. The zoning board then will discuss the case. The zoning board then will make a motion and vote on the case. That is our procedure and the procedure we will follow. At this time, I would ask anybody that intends to present evidence and testimony to please stand. Swear or affirm that any testimony you give will be true and accurate to the best of your belief. Thank you. At this time, I would call for hearing ZBA 2024 minimum-01, a request by Daniel Gilbert and Amanda Theophone for a minor variance to reduce the required front yard from 25 feet to 22 feet at 309 West Michigan Avenue in the R1 Single Family Residential Zoning District. And we have a staff report, please.
Good evening, ZBA. As stated, Daniel Gilbert and Amanda Ciaffoni request a minor variance to reduce the required front yard along Carl Avenue from 25 feet to 22 feet to allow construction of a garage. The board may approve the request with conditions, or deny the request. The board should either accept the specific staff findings or articulate their own specific findings based on the variance criteria. Staff recommend the ZBA approve the minor variance with one condition. The house at 309 West Michigan Avenue was built in 1926. The lot was platted in 1914 as part of the Hubbard Trace subdivision, which required a 75-foot front yard for the 14 lots along Michigan and Pennsylvania avenues. The Michigan Avenue lots also required a 7.5-foot utility easement along the rear or south property line, requiring any accessory structure to be built closer to the house and reducing the core area of the backyard. The property is located on the south side of Michigan Avenue between Carl Avenue and South Race Street, here in the little hatched area. So all of these lots along Michigan have a 75-foot front yard setback as required by the plat. The applicants want to build a 528 square foot garage and request a minor variance to locate it 3 feet closer to Carl Avenue. Recent renovations include an addition on the south side of the house facing the rear yard. The west room of the 200-year-old house is only 17 feet from the west property line, encroaching 8 feet into the required 25-foot front yard along Carl Avenue. Here is the zoning of the area. This parcel and parcels east and west and south of it are zoned R1, single-family residential, all of which require a 25 to 60-foot front yard average of the houses on the block. Of course, the ones on these 2 blocks of Michigan have a 75-foot required front yard. So here we have an aerial looking down east towards the house from above Carl Avenue. The house is set back 75 feet. There is a 7.5-foot rear yard easement. This is the proposed area of the garage, still 22 feet back from the Carl Avenue property line. Here is the submitted site plan. It shows that the house is set back 75 feet from the north property line along Michigan. We zoom in a little bit. We see this 25-foot setback for a front yard in the R1 on a corner lot. We also see that the house encroaches 8 feet into that required front yard. So therefore, the house is legally non-conforming. Its construction, though, predates the City of Urbana's zoning ordinance. And then here is the 25-foot setback along Carl, and then the 7.5-foot required utility easement. The normal setback for an accessory structure from a rear or side yard in a residential district is normally 18 inches. And in this case, it's 7.5 feet because of the easement. And then there's the typical 5-foot side yard easement along the east property line. Here we have the proposed location of the garage encroaching 3 feet into that side yard. Here again, that same aerial shot showing the 17-foot setback currently from the house to that line, and then the 22-foot setback for the proposed garage and the 7.5-foot rear yard setback. You know, you can see that it's still it is quite a bit into the core area of the backyard because of that 22-foot setback, which is a requirement for all houses in the R1 district that are on a corner lot. A lot of the houses, though, predate the zoning, so their garages and those houses often encroach into that side yard, that side front yard setback. This location would provide enough clear sky for the garage's planned roof-mounted solar panels to function. The configuration would also maintain the house's historic view of the rear yard better and align a proposed sidewalk from the garage to the stoop on the new addition. So this aerial predates the addition. It is set back about 28 feet from the property line and allowing the house, the garage to be 22 feet back would align a sidewalk from the garage to the house. The garage otherwise would meet all other development regulations for the R1 district. The zoning ordinance requires the Zoning Board of Appeals to make findings based on variance criteria. There's a little additional detail in this staff report because we wanted to clarify some things that the zoning ordinance states. The board must first determine, based on the evidence presented, whether there are special circumstances or special practical difficulties with reference to the property concerned in carrying out the strict application of the ordinance, and why, if granted, the variance will serve the public interest or will not unreasonably hinder and impair the public interest. This criterion is intended to serve as a minimum threshold that must be met before a variance request may be evaluated. Other than meeting criterion 1, there are no other requirements, such as meeting a certain number of criteria. So the first criterion, special circumstances or special practical difficulties. The special circumstances of this parcel are the three conditions that together, but not individually, significantly reduce the parcel's gross area of 16,000 square feet to its buildable area of 6,000 square feet. The 75-foot front yard along Michigan, the 25-foot front yard along Carl, and the 7.5-foot rear utility easement. So staff find this criterion of special circumstances met. The second criterion, the requested variance will not serve as a special privilege because there are only 4 parcels in the city that exhibit the 3 existing conditions that together create the special conditions to be addressed by the variance. These are the 4 corner lots in Hubbard's Trace along Michigan Avenue. I checked with Dan Rothermel, who is the city surveyor, to see if he knew of any other subdivisions in the city that required a 75-foot front yard setback. And the only subdivision that he knows of is the University Heights Edition, which is just down the road on Michigan Avenue. Those 2 blocks along Michigan also require a 75-foot front yard setback, and there are also 4 corner lots in there. There are additional corner lots in the R1 zoning district. They don't have the 75-foot front yard requirement, and the other ones at Hubbard's Trace don't have the 7.5-foot rear yard easement. So this is, in staff's opinion, a pretty special circumstance that isn't replicated elsewhere in the city except for 3 other corner lots here. So staff find this criterion met. Third, the applicants did not create the existing conditions, including the rear yard utility easement. So staff find this criterion met. Fourth, the garage would be consistent with the essential character of the neighborhood, which includes other non-conforming homes and garages that encroach into their front yards. The applicants provided an exhibit where they showed other houses with detached garages where the house and or garage encroach into that, what I call the side front yard along the non-main street. So more pointing to the fact that this is also manifested at other places in the neighborhood. So staff find this criterion met. Fifth, the garage will not create a nuisance because its distance from adjacent intersections and access drives conforms with current access guidelines, and the 7.5-foot utility easement requires the garage to be further from the property line than the typical 18-inch setback for a garage. Staff find this criterion met as well. Finally, the applicants are requesting the variance to improve the view of their rear yard and reduce impervious area and stormwater runoff. Staff find that the applicants would still be able to build a garage without the requested variance that would meet all development requirements and still leave a usable backyard. Staff find this criterion not met. So overall, staff find that 5 of the 6 criteria weigh in favor of granting the minor variance. Regarding public notice and input, staff published a legal ad, sent letters to 44 neighboring property owners, and posted a public hearing sign on the property. Staff received 2 letters of support. In addition, the applicants distributed letters to the neighbors and received 1 letter of support, which was included in their application. The staff findings are summarized in the staff report. Let's see what other pictures we've got. So here are some pictures provided by the applicant showing where the addition, how it looks out onto the rear yard. And one of the reasons for their application is the closer the garage is to the street, the more of the core backyard they have available to use and look at. Here's a panoramic fisheye shot that I took of the west side of the property. The house is here, The garage would start right about here. Let me zoom in and give you a better picture. So here's a nice straight shot. You might be able to see a little flag, blue flag right here. That's where I stepped off, and that would be essentially where the northwest corner of the garage would be. So the garage would go this way and in that way. And this would still be the setback from the property line. Staff finds that the requests met 5 of the 6 variance criteria, including the minimum threshold of special circumstances, and that it would not unreasonably hinder and impair the public interest. ZBA has the following options in this case: approve the variance as requested, approve the variance with certain terms and conditions, or deny the variance request. If the ZBA elects to recommend conditions other than those articulated in the staff report, they should articulate those findings accordingly. Staff recommends that the ZBA approve the proposed minor variance, in this case with one condition, that construction be in general conformance with the attached site plan. That's the end of my staff report. Mr. Gilbert is here and would like to make a short statement, and we're both available to answer questions.
Are there any questions for staff? Hearing none, thank you. The applicant can step forward, please. You have to sign in.
Well, I'd really like to thank all of you for considering our request, and I'd also like to thank. Sorry. My name is Dan Gilbert.
Thank you.
In addition to thanking the board, I'd like to thank Marcus Ricci for all his help and work, and also thank all our neighbors for putting up with all the construction commotion over on the corner of Michigan and Carl. So my spouse, Amanda Ciafone, and I have lived in West Urbana for 12 and a half years, and we plan to live at 309 West Michigan for decades to come. We have 2 kids, ages 9 and 4, who, like us, love living here in Urbana. We purchased 309 West Michigan in October 2019, and our initial renovation plans were delayed by COVID, as well as by structural issues in the house that we encountered after the purchase. It's taken us much longer than we ever thought to get to the point of finally seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. Along the way, we had multiple home builders tell us that it would be wiser to tear down the house and start anew, given the house's long-standing state of disrepair. There was extensive termite damage throughout the floor structure. There were years of water damage from a failing roof, some foundation issues, other problems that we had been really too blinded by old house love to see. But we are very proud that we didn't listen to those very well-meaning contractors and push forward with the goal of updating this beautiful old house to make it our family's home. Finding a workable location for the garage has proved challenging. The 2 front yards of a corner lot and the substantial utility easement along the south side limited the possible locations. Our commitment to utilizing the south face of the garage roof for solar panels was also a limiting factor. We worked with an architect to maintain the historic character of the house while respecting the modern setback, even though the original single-story west wing was significantly over the 25-foot setback. We developed a plan for a detached garage located 18 inches from the south property line. It was actually not until construction on the house had already begun that we became aware of the utility easement and the fact that the garage would need to occupy much more of the yard than we anticipated. We arrived at our proposed location, 22 feet east of the property line along Carl Avenue and 7.5 feet north of the south property line, based on the following principles. First, a design that is in keeping with the house's distinguishing architectural elements and lot position. Placing the garage at 22 feet east of the property line allows a simple walkway from the garage to the house's side entrance. The one-story west wing of the original house sitting just 17 feet east of the property line, and the new south addition sitting roughly 28 feet from the line, we feel that a 22-foot setback will work well both functionally and aesthetically. Additionally, in terms of the design of the garage itself, we plan for the siding of the garage to match a color from the house, likely the shutter color on the house. And the building will have a 412 roof slope, the same as the house. Our second design principle is to limit the amount of paved area and the resulting stormwater runoff, and to maximize the green space in the yard. Our third principle in choosing a garage location has been to make sure that parked vehicles would not interfere with neighborhood use of the sidewalk. 22 feet is sufficient to keep even oversized pickup trucks clear of the sidewalk. And our fourth principle was to try to maximize sun exposure for the solar panels. We're excited to be participating in the Urbana Group Buy solar program. We think our proposed location meets these principles, but we believe it also is in the spirit of the longstanding design practices of our neighborhood. And just want to thank you all so much for considering our request. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Hearing none, thank you. I do not believe we have any proponents or opponents. You a proponent or opponent? Proponent, I have to swear you in if you want to be heard, I take it. Swear or affirm that any testimony you give will be true and accurate to the best of your belief. Thank you. Please sign in and state your name.
My name is Darlene Kleppel. I am a neighbor of the proposed project. I sit kitty corner southeast to the back, and I'm also representing this evening the homeowner, Marilyn Reinhardt, who sits directly behind. She wasn't able to come tonight. I just wanted to say we've been following the construction of the house pretty closely. We're happy with the design of the house. We think they're doing a great job, and we are having no objection to the variance that's being requested this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold on. I don't think there are any questions, but I gotta ask. Any questions for the proponent? Thank you, ma'am. Now I believe that we have covered all opponents, no opponents. I take it you don't need to make any final statement, the applicant? All right. We're now to the point where the board, we ready to discuss this case? Any discussion to be had? Hearing none, then is there any motions to be made in regards to this particular case?
I move that the Zoning Board of Appeals approve the proposed minor variance in case ZBA 2024-MIN-01, based on the findings outlined in the memo and with one condition, that construction be in general conformance with the attached site plan.
It's been moved. Is there a second to that motion? Second. Is there any further discussion? Go ahead.
Do we need to add any other thing to the motion as to why we are approving it? And is that sufficient?
That is sufficient. Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Then if we have no additional discussion, are we ready to have a vote on this motion? And would call, roll call, please.
Ms. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Bornbrun,
Yes.
Welch,
Yes.
and Ms. Chester.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Is there any old business?
There is no old business.
Any new business?
No.
Any audience participation? Hearing none. Is there a staff report?
There is no staff report.
Study session?
Nope.
Then if we have no further business, I move that we be adjourned.
Adjourned at 7:26 PM.